Why you should be selfish. Stoic philosophy. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. Marcus Aurelius. Welcome to Stoic Secrets. Today we're diving deep into a concept that's often misunderstood but completely life-changing. You've been told your whole life, don't be selfish, think of others. But what if I told you that being selfish in the right way is actually the key to unlocking a more balanced, fulfilled, and powerful life? Imagine this. You're constantly drained, always putting everyone else first. Sound familiar? Now what if I told you that being selfish is exactly what you need to break free from that exhaustion and start living a life that aligns with your true values? I've been there, saying yes to everything, giving until I had nothing left. It left me feeling lost, burnt out, and disconnected from my own priorities. But one day, I made a decision that changed everything. I chose to be selfish. And guess what? It was the most empowering move I ever made. In today's video, I'm going to share with you why adopting a selfish mindset, guided by Stoic philosophy, can be your ultimate tool for personal growth, strength, and inner peace. Whether you're someone who always says yes to everyone else, or you just need to start prioritizing yourself, this is for you. Get ready. This is going to be real, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little controversial. Let's dive in. Number 1. Being selfish teaches you to prioritize. Now, I know what you're thinking. Being selfish? That doesn't sound very virtuous, does it? But here's the twist. Being selfish, in the right way, is not about neglecting others. It's about understanding and honoring your own needs first, so that you can show up as your best self for others. Let's explore this deeper, because this concept might challenge everything you've been taught. We've all heard it since childhood. Don't be selfish. Share your toys. Think about others first and always put everyone else's needs ahead of your own. While these lessons were well-meaning, they inadvertently conditioned us to believe that self-sacrifice was the only path to being a good person. But no one ever teaches you what happens when you spend your entire life putting others first. What happens is that your priorities get buried beneath everyone else's. Your life starts to feel like a never-ending to-do list for other people, and before you know it, you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and disconnected from what truly matters to you. Take a moment and think about this. When was the last time you did something purely for yourself? Something that wasn't for your partner, your kids, your boss, or your friends, but something that was genuinely for you? If that question feels uncomfortable, then you're probably overdue for a realignment of your priorities. And let me tell you, I've been there too. I used to be the ultimate yes person. I said yes to everything, helping out coworkers, taking on extra projects, attending every family event. I thought being available to everyone made me a good person. But what I didn't realize was that in the process, I was neglecting the most important person in my life, myself. There was one night after working late on a project that wasn't even mine, when it finally hit me. I sat there exhausted, drained, and completely burnt out, asking myself, what am I doing? Why was I spending all my time fulfilling other people's demands while completely neglecting my own? I didn't even know what my own priorities were anymore because I had been too busy focusing on everyone else's. That night was a turning point for me. I decided it was time to get selfish. And that's when everything changed. Now I get it. This might sound controversial. When you start prioritizing yourself, people around you are not always going to like it. They've grown accustomed to you putting them first, and when you start setting boundaries, they might call you selfish, and they're not wrong. But here's the thing. Being selfish teaches you what's truly important. It forces you to filter out the noise and focus on what matters. And let's be honest, a lot of what we get sucked into every day is just noise. I'll never forget the first time I said no after I decided to put myself first. A friend asked me to help plan a big event, and in the past, I would have said yes without hesitation, even though I was exhausted and had my own plans. But this time, I said no. Her reaction wasn't great. She called me selfish, and for a split second, I felt guilty. But then I stopped and asked myself, why should I feel bad for protecting my own time and energy? The truth is, we have to be selfish if we ever want to understand what really matters to us. It's like the oxygen mask analogy. When you're on a plane, they always tell you to put on your own mask before helping others. You can't help anyone if you're running on empty. By being selfish, I started asking myself important questions. What do I actually care about? What do I want to focus on? And that's when I started setting boundaries, something I had never done before. I began saying no to things that didn't align with my goals or well-being. And you know what? My life started to change. I became more focused, more energized, and more connected to what truly mattered to me. Now, this doesn't mean I stopped caring about others. Far from it. But I realized that my own well-being had to come first if I wanted to show up as my best self for the people I love. Prioritizing yourself is not about being heartless. It's about being smart. You're no good to anyone if you're constantly exhausted and drained. In fact, I'd argue that you can serve others more effectively when you've taken the time to care for yourself first. Let's be real. If you don't prioritize yourself, who will? No one is going to make you a priority until you do it for yourself. When you stop chasing other people's dreams and start focusing on your own, you begin to live a life that's aligned with your values, not someone else's. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you found yourself running around solving other people's problems, fulfilling their needs, while your own dreams and desires sit on the back burner? That's what happens when you fail to prioritize yourself. And here's a deeper question. What would your life look like if you started putting yourself first? How would your relationships change? How much more energy would you have? What new opportunities would arise if you stopped saying yes to everything and started saying yes to yourself? These are powerful questions that can transform the way you approach your life. There's a famous quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." And that's exactly what being selfish allows you to do. It helps you reclaim your identity, your time, and your energy. You stop living on autopilot and start making conscious choices that reflect what you truly want. Of course, people might not like it when you start setting boundaries. They've become used to your endless availability, and they might push back when you say no. But here's the thing. That's not your problem. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. And those who don't? Well, they were probably only around for what they could get from you in the first place. When you start being selfish, you begin to see who truly values you and who was just taking advantage of your kindness. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's also incredibly freeing. You realize that your time and energy are precious resources, and not everyone deserves a piece of them. So, where do you go from here? How do you start prioritizing yourself in a way that feels authentic and empowering? It all begins with one simple step: setting boundaries. Start small. Say no to that extra project at work. Decline that social event that you're too exhausted to attend, or take some time for yourself without feeling guilty. These small acts of selfishness will begin to create a ripple effect in your life, leading to more energy, more focus, and more fulfillment. The brutal truth is that no one is going to prioritize your happiness, your goals, or your well-being until you do it first. And guess what? That's okay. In fact, that's the way it should be. Because when you start putting yourself first, everything else falls into place. So let me leave you with this open-ended question. What are you going to do today to prioritize yourself? Think about it and take action, because your life is too important to be lived on someone else's terms. Number 2, it helps you avoid burnout. Let's start with a quote from Epictetus. "No man is free who is not master of himself." This profound Stoic teaching serves as the perfect foundation for our topic today: Why you must be selfish if you want to avoid burnout. Now, before you start thinking that being selfish is a negative trait, let's reframe it. We're not talking about selfishness that ignores others' needs or leaves people in the dust. We're talking about the kind of selfishness that prioritizes your well-being, your energy, and your time so that you can show up as your best self in all areas of life. You see, burnout isn't just a buzzword. It's a real consequence of failing to protect your boundaries, and in a society that glorifies the hustle, it's easy to fall into the trap of constant giving and saying yes to everything. But here's the truth. If you keep giving and never take time for yourself, burnout is inevitable. Think about it. How often do you find yourself saying yes when you're already exhausted? You've probably felt it before. The creeping sense of dread when you've committed to one too many things, the endless to-do list that never seems to shrink, the overwhelming fatigue that leaves you wondering when was the last time you actually did something for you. That's burnout knocking at your door. And here's where being selfish swoops in as your saving grace. It's the ultimate burnout prevention tool because when you prioritize yourself, you protect your most valuable resources, your energy, and your mental well-being. If that sounds controversial, that's because we've been conditioned to believe that selflessness is a virtue, that the hustle and grind are badges of honor. But let me ask you this. What's so noble about running yourself into the ground? Burnout doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's the result of neglecting your needs over time. It's the slow leak in your spirit, where you keep pouring yourself into others' cups until there's nothing left for you. How many times have you felt completely drained? Not because you were selfish, but because you were too busy trying to be everything for everyone. That's the crux of the problem. We're taught to keep going, keep giving, but no one teaches us to set boundaries that protect our well-being. And let me tell you from personal experience, burnout doesn't just affect your work. It affects your relationships, your passions, and your happiness. I remember a time in my life when I thought I could juggle everything: work, relationships, side projects, favors for friends. I was doing it all, thinking that I was strong enough to handle it. But deep down, I was miserable. The things I once loved felt like chores, and I had nothing left to give to myself. But here's the kicker. No one ever told me to stop. No one warned me that I was heading for a wall. And people don't usually mind when you're burning out for them because they benefit from your constant availability. It wasn't until I literally hit a wall, walking into one out of sheer exhaustion, that I realized something had to change. I'd been saying yes to everything and everyone except myself, and it was costing me my health, my peace of mind, and my happiness. This is where being selfish became a game changer for me. Once I started setting boundaries, once I started saying no to things that didn't align with my priorities or serve my well-being, something incredible happened. The world didn't fall apart. In fact, my life got better. Sure, some people weren't thrilled when I stopped jumping to meet their every need, but that was their problem, not mine. What I gained was far more valuable. I regained my energy, my clarity, and my sense of purpose. I was no longer just going through the motions, running on fumes. I felt alive again, and with that energy, I was able to dive back into the things I loved, my creative projects, my passions, and even my relationships, with more focus and joy. Here's the thing. Being selfish isn't just okay. It's vital. If you don't take care of yourself, no one else will. Burnout isn't something that happens overnight, and it's not something you recover from overnight either. It's the result of ignoring the warning signs, of giving too much for too long, and it's a long road back once you've crossed that line. That's why being selfish is essential for your survival. It's about recognizing that your energy is finite, that you have limits, and that you need to protect those limits fiercely. You can't be everything for everyone without sacrificing yourself in the process, and let me tell you, no one is going to hand you a medal for burning yourself out. In fact, society will likely continue to reward you for being the workhorse, the one who goes above and beyond. But at what cost? The Stoics teach us that true strength lies in self-mastery. in understanding what we can and cannot control. And one of the things you absolutely must control is your time and energy. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." When you waste your energy on things that don't serve you, when you say yes out of obligation instead of alignment with your values, you're wasting your most precious resource. By being selfish, you reclaim that time and energy, and you direct it toward the things that actually matter to you. So where does this leave you? The takeaway is simple. Be selfish, and do it unapologetically. Set those boundaries. Say no to that extra project when you're already overwhelmed. Decline that favor if it doesn't fit into your schedule. Guard your time and energy like they are gold, because they are. And trust me, when you start putting yourself first, the people who truly care about you will understand. Those who don't? Well, they were likely only interested in what they could get from you. Being selfish reveals who truly respects your boundaries and who doesn't. And that's a gift in itself. But here's the real challenge. Being selfish doesn't come naturally to most of us, especially in a world that rewards constant giving. So, how do you start? Start small. Say no to one thing today. Carve out time for yourself, even if it's just 30 minutes to do something you enjoy. Over time, those small acts of selfishness will build, and you'll notice the difference. You'll have more energy, more focus, and more joy in your life. And isn't that what we all want? A life where we're not just surviving but thriving. If you don't start being selfish now, burnout is inevitable. No one is going to step in and save you from yourself. You have to take control, set those boundaries, and protect your well-being. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." How you react to burnout, how you choose to protect yourself, will determine your path forward. So give yourself permission to be selfish. Take care of you first, because only then can you truly be there for others in a meaningful, sustainable way. You have one life, one body, and one mind. Make sure you protect them. Number 3. You realize that not everyone deserves your time. Let's talk about a hard truth. Not everyone deserves your time. It sounds blunt, but the reality is that if you're not selfish with your time, people will waste it for you, and that's something you can't afford. Time is the one resource you can never get back, and while people might have good intentions, not everyone should have unlimited access to your time, energy, and attention. You know what this feels like. You've got 100 things on your plate, from work responsibilities to personal goals, maybe even a relationship to nurture, and then your phone lights up with a text from a friend asking, "Can we talk? I need advice." Of course you want to help, so you say yes. But before you know it, 2 hours have passed, and you've accomplished nothing from your own to-do list. You're emotionally drained. And the friend? Well, their problem isn't solved either. People will gladly take your time if you keep offering it, which is exactly why you need to be selfish with it. Let me share a story to make this clearer. A couple of years ago, I had a friend. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah was a wonderful person, but she always needed something from me. Advice, emotional support, help with projects. I was her go-to person for everything, and in the beginning, I didn't mind. After all, we were friends, right? But over time, I began to notice something. It was a one-way street. She would vent about her problems for hours, but when I needed someone to lean on, I got nothing but silence. I was giving her my time, but there was no reciprocity. And it wasn't just with Sarah. This pattern was repeating itself with other people in my life too. One day, after yet another draining conversation where Sarah unloaded all her problems, and I felt emotionally wiped out, I had a moment of clarity. Not everyone deserves my time. It felt harsh, but it was the truth. Being selfish with my time wasn't about shutting people out. It was about realizing that just because someone asks for my time doesn't mean they're entitled to it. I needed to be selective, to decide who gets a slice of my time pie, because not everyone is worthy of it. And frankly, not everyone will appreciate it the way I deserve. This is where the deeper message comes in. Your time is your most valuable asset, and once you give it away, it's gone forever. So why do we treat it like it's endless? Being selfish with your time isn't just smart, it's essential. Time is like a limited currency, and not everyone should have access to spend it. Think about how many times people have asked you for a quick favor that turned into a whole afternoon of effort, or a just need to talk text that spiraled into a therapy session you never signed up for. It's great to be there for others, but it's equally important to ask yourself, is this person giving back what I'm putting in? If the answer is no, then maybe it's time to reconsider how much of your time they get. Here's something controversial. Being selfish with your time doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who values yourself. People might not like it when you start saying no or setting boundaries, but guess what? That's their problem, not yours. When I started to limit my availability and said things like, "Sorry, I can't talk right now," or "I'm focusing on my own thing at the moment," I was amazed at the reactions. Some people got mad, others just drifted away. And you know what I realized? The people who truly cared about me respected my time and boundaries. The ones who didn't? Well, they never really cared in the first place. They just liked the convenience of me always being there. Let me tell you another story. Once I started being more selfish with my time, something incredible happened. I suddenly had time for the things that actually mattered to me. I was able to focus on my own goals, pursue my hobbies, and work on personal growth. And here's the kicker. I was so much happier. My days weren't filled with constant demands from other people. Instead, I was filling my time with activities and relationships that energized me. This is the beauty of being selfish. You get to choose where your time goes, and by doing that, you regain control of your life. Here's the deeper truth. The people who deserve your time are the ones who respect it. When you start being more selective with who gets your time, you'll notice that your relationships improve. You'll have fewer shallow, draining interactions and more meaningful, deeper connections with people who truly value you and what you bring into their lives. And guess what? You'll start valuing yourself more too. Protecting your time isn't just about keeping your schedule clear. It's about guarding your energy, your mental well-being, and your self-worth. The reality is that you can't be available to everyone and still be available to yourself. When you stop handing out your time like it's free candy, you start to see who's really there for you and who's just taking advantage of your generosity. Some people will call you selfish, but that's because they're used to benefiting from your lack of boundaries. When you finally set those limits, they'll have to find someone else to drain, and that's no longer your problem. So here's the takeaway. Be selfish with your time because not everyone deserves it. It's okay to say no. It's okay to step back. And it's definitely okay to prioritize yourself. At the end of the day, your time is the most valuable resource you have, so make sure it's spent on people and things that genuinely matter to you. This is the essence of Stoic philosophy, protecting what you can control and not letting external demands rob you of your peace. As Seneca wisely said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. So don't waste yours." Number 4. People respect boundaries when you set them. Let's talk about something that a lot of people shy away from. Boundaries. Setting boundaries is one of the most important things you can do for yourself, yet it's often seen as uncomfortable or even selfish. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not just some fluffy self-help concept. They're essential for living a balanced, fulfilling life. And here's the best part. People actually respect boundaries when you set them. It might seem surprising, but once you clearly define what you will and won't accept in your life, you'll notice a shift in how others treat you. The key is that you must be the one to enforce your own boundaries because no one else will do it for you. If you don't, you're essentially giving everyone permission to walk all over you. And trust me, that's a disaster waiting to happen. One of the hardest things to learn is that you have to be firm about your boundaries. People won't always know where the line is unless you tell them. We've been conditioned to believe that being agreeable and accommodating is the right way to behave. But let's face it, being a pushover will only lead to burnout and frustration. Take it from me, I learned this the hard way. A few years ago, I was working in a job where my boss had a bad habit of dropping last-minute projects on my desk, expecting them to be completed instantly. Initially, I went along with it, thinking that saying no would make me seem uncooperative. I didn't want to rock the boat. But as time went on, I found myself overwhelmed, staying late at the office and completely neglecting my personal life. I was constantly stressed out, but here's the kicker. My boss had no idea I was struggling. Why? Because I hadn't spoken up. I was silently hoping someone would realize that I was drowning in work. Spoiler alert, no one did. It wasn't until one particularly brutal week, where I worked through the weekend to meet an unreasonable deadline, that I finally snapped. I walked into my boss's office and told her that I needed to set some boundaries. To my surprise, she wasn't angry. She was shocked. She had no idea how overburdened I was because I had never said anything. And here's the most interesting part. After I set those boundaries, not only did my boss respect them, but she also became more thoughtful about how she assigned work moving forward. That's when I realized that setting boundaries doesn't just protect you, it earns you respect. This is the lesson. When you set boundaries, people start to respect you more. It's like a switch gets flipped, and suddenly they see you as someone who values their own time and energy. After that experience, I found that not only did I earn more respect from my boss, but even my colleagues started coming to me for advice on how to set their own boundaries. It was eye-opening to see that others had been waiting for someone to show them that it's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your time. In fact, by doing so, you give others permission to do the same. Now, let's be honest. Setting boundaries isn't always going to be easy. Some people might push back, and others might not like the fact that you're no longer the person they can always count on to say yes. I remember one of my close friends getting upset when I told her I couldn't drop everything to help her anymore. She accused me of being selfish, and for a moment, I felt guilty. But then I realized that prioritizing my own needs wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Some people will get uncomfortable when you start taking care of yourself, and that's okay. Discomfort is part of growth. And once you get comfortable with setting your boundaries, you'll notice something interesting. It becomes contagious. Here's the ripple effect. When you set boundaries, you encourage others to do the same. One of my colleagues saw how I handled my workload after setting boundaries and decided to start saying no to extra meetings that weren't necessary. Soon, others followed suit, and before long we had created a work culture where people respected each other's time and energy. Who knew that by standing my ground, I could positively impact the entire office environment? But here's the key. You have to be consistent. It's one thing to set a boundary, but if you don't enforce it, those boundaries won't mean anything. I made this mistake early on. After setting my boundaries, I sometimes slipped back into old habits, saying yes to things I should have turned down, and each time I did, I noticed the respect I had gained started to fade. People began to push those boundaries again, thinking they weren't real. The lesson? You have to stay firm. When I reset my boundaries and consistently enforced them, the respect returned stronger than ever. The takeaway here is simple. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect, and when you respect yourself, others will respect you too. So, the next time you feel guilty about setting boundaries, remind yourself that you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the people around you too. You're showing them how to treat you and modeling a behavior that can help create healthier, more balanced relationships. It's a win-win situation. Setting boundaries is not just about saying no to things you don't want. It's about saying yes to the things that matter most to you. It's about protecting your time, your energy, and your mental well-being. The great philosopher Epictetus once said, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." Setting boundaries is how you master yourself. Boundaries are about creating a life where you're in control, where your needs matter as much as everyone else's, and where you don't have to sacrifice your well-being to make others happy. So go ahead, be a little selfish, set those boundaries, and watch as people start respecting you in ways you never thought possible. You deserve it, and more importantly, you're capable of it. What boundaries will you set today, and how will they change the way you live your life? Number 5. You're not responsible for everyone else's happiness. Let's get real for a moment. One of the most liberating truths in life is this: you are not responsible for everyone else's happiness. Now, I know that might sound selfish at first, but hear me out. We've all been taught to believe that making others happy is part of being a good person. From a young age, we're conditioned to think that if we care about someone, we should always do whatever we can to make them happy. But here's where things get tricky. When you spend your life trying to carry the weight of other people's emotions, you end up sacrificing your own well-being in the process. The truth is, you can't be someone's constant source of happiness, and trying to do so will only lead to frustration, resentment, and burnout. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Notice how he didn't say it depends on how much you do for others. Think about it. How many times have you gone out of your way to make sure someone else was happy, only to find that no matter how much effort you put in, it still wasn't enough? Maybe it was a friend, a family member, or even a partner. You bend over backward, offering advice, support, time, and energy. But at the end of the day, their mood, their happiness, is still out of your control. Why? Because happiness is an inside job. As much as you want to help, no one can make someone else happy 100% of the time. People must find their own path to joy, and trying to do that work for them is not only exhausting, it's impossible. So why do we feel so much pressure to be responsible for other people's happiness? Maybe it's because society praises selflessness to the point where we forget that taking care of our own needs isn't just important, it's essential. But let me ask you this. What happens when you neglect your own happiness for the sake of others? Here's a personal story that might resonate with you. I had a friend, let's call him John, who always seemed to be going through something. Whether it was problems at work, issues in his relationship, or just general dissatisfaction with life, he would constantly turn to me for advice and emotional support. At first, I didn't mind. After all, that's what friends are for, right? But over time, I noticed that no matter how much I tried to help him, it was never enough. I'd spend hours on the phone, trying to lift his spirits, giving him advice, or just listening to him vent, but nothing changed. He was still unhappy, and to be honest, I was starting to feel drained. One day, after yet another long conversation where I felt like I was pouring all my energy into making him feel better, it hit me. I couldn't make John happy because that wasn't my job. His happiness wasn't my responsibility, and the more I tried to carry that burden, the more I was neglecting my own mental and emotional health. This is where the deep message comes in. You can care about people, you can support them, but you cannot be responsible for their happiness. It's not selfish to take a step back and realize that everyone is responsible for their own emotional well-being. In fact, it's healthy. It's about creating balance in your relationships, where you're not constantly sacrificing your own needs to fulfill someone else's. The Stoics believed in focusing on what you can control, and as Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." You can't control other people's emotions, but you can control how much of your energy you give away. So, what does this mean for you? It means it's time to let go of the guilt that comes with not being able to make everyone around you happy all the time. Ask yourself this. How much of your energy are you pouring into other people's happiness at the expense of your own? And what would happen if you took some of that energy back and focused it on your own joy, your own fulfillment? The truth is, when you prioritize your own happiness, not only do you feel better, but you're actually more equipped to be there for others in a healthy and sustainable way. You're not running on empty, giving until you have nothing left. Of course, some people might accuse you of being selfish when you start setting boundaries around how much emotional labor you're willing to take on. But here's the thing. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's self-respect. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're constantly giving to others without filling yourself up, you'll eventually burn out. And what good will you be to anyone if you're exhausted, unhappy, and resentful? By focusing on your own happiness first, you create a stronger foundation to help others from a place of balance and inner peace, rather than obligation and guilt. Let me give you another example from modern life. Think about the people you interact with daily, your family, friends, colleagues. How often do you find yourself trying to keep the peace, trying to make everyone happy, even when it's at the expense of your own well-being? Maybe it's staying late at work because you don't want to disappoint your boss, or saying yes to a social event when you'd rather have some quiet time for yourself. These small acts of self-sacrifice might seem harmless, but over time they add up. And suddenly, you're the one left feeling unhappy. And here's the tough truth. Not everyone will appreciate the efforts you make. Some people will take advantage of your kindness, expecting you to always be there to lift them up but rarely returning the favor. This is why it's so important to set boundaries and remember that you are not responsible for making everyone else happy. Here's the big takeaway. By accepting that you're not responsible for other people's happiness, you free yourself from the constant pressure of trying to fix everyone's problems. You can show up in your relationships as a stronger, more grounded version of yourself, without the burden of carrying someone else's emotional baggage. As a result, you'll have more energy to focus on the things that bring you joy, and your relationships will be healthier because they're built on mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice. So the next time you feel guilty for not being able to make someone else happy, remind yourself that your first responsibility is to your own well-being. As the Stoics taught, true freedom comes from focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, and your happiness. Everything else is outside your control, and that includes other people's emotions. So, ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped trying to make everyone else happy and focused on your own happiness instead? It's time to let go of the guilt, set those boundaries, and take back control of your life. After all, as Seneca said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And one of the most important lessons in life is this. You are not responsible for anyone's happiness, but your own. Number 6. Being selfish strengthens your self-worth. Let's dive into an essential but often overlooked truth. Being selfish strengthens your self-worth. Now, I know the word selfish tends to have a negative connotation, but in reality, it's not always about ignoring others or being self-centered. It's about prioritizing your needs, valuing your time, and protecting your energy. When you consistently put others before yourself, you're sending a subtle message that your needs aren't as important, and over time, that erodes your self-worth. But here's the key. When you start putting yourself first, when you allow yourself to say no to things that don't serve you, you send a powerful message. I am valuable, and my needs matter too. As Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This quote reminds us that true freedom comes from taking control of our lives, including how we value ourselves. So why does being selfish strengthen your self-worth? Because when you prioritize yourself, you begin to see that your time, your energy, and your desires are just as important as anyone else's. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that being there for others all the time makes you a good person. But in reality, when you constantly neglect your own needs, you're telling yourself that you're not worth that same effort. Imagine how that affects your confidence, your sense of identity, and ultimately your happiness. When you start putting yourself first, you reclaim the power over your own life. You stop relying on others to give you validation because you start to find it within yourself. The more you practice self-care and set healthy boundaries, the more you'll realize that you don't need to seek approval from others to feel good about yourself. You have the power to do that on your own. And here's the thing. Being selfish in this way isn't about being unkind or inconsiderate. It's about respecting yourself enough to know when to say no. It's about recognizing when something or someone is draining your energy and deciding to step back. This kind of selfishness is self-respect. It allows you to show up for yourself so that when you do show up for others, you're doing it from a place of abundance, not exhaustion. But the first step is recognizing that you deserve to take care of yourself. Let me ask you, when was the last time you made a decision that was solely for your own well-being without feeling guilty about it? When you start being selfish in this healthy way, you'll notice that your confidence grows. You begin to see your worth, not in how much you do for others, but in how much you value yourself. This shift in mindset is crucial because self-worth isn't something you get from external sources. It's built from within. The more you prioritize your own needs, the stronger your self-worth becomes. You begin to set higher standards for how others treat you because you've already set high standards for yourself. And guess what? People respect that. They start to see that you're not someone who can be easily taken advantage of or overlooked. They see that you value yourself, and in turn, they value you more. There's a famous quote by Dr. Seuss that says, "Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind." This perfectly illustrates what happens when you start setting boundaries and prioritizing yourself. The people who truly care about you will respect your decisions, while those who are only interested in what they can get from you will fall away. And honestly, isn't that a good thing? Do you really want to be surrounded by people who only value you when you're serving their needs? Or would you rather have relationships where both parties respect and value each other's time, energy, and boundaries? Now, let's talk about the long-term benefits of being selfish in this way. Not only does it improve your self-worth, but it also brings clarity to your life. When you're constantly putting yourself last, it's easy to lose sight of your own goals, dreams, and ambitions. But when you start to prioritize yourself, you gain a clearer sense of direction. You start to focus on what truly matters to you. You realize that your time and energy are limited resources, and it's up to you to decide how to use them wisely. This clarity leads to more intentional living, where you're no longer just going through the motions, but actively creating a life that aligns with your values and desires. Being selfish also helps you to stop seeking validation from others. How many times have you done something you didn't want to do, simply because you thought it would make someone else happy, or you feared their disapproval? When you start putting yourself first, you stop caring so much about what others think. You begin to realize that their opinion of you doesn't define your worth. You do. This is incredibly freeing because it allows you to live authentically. You stop bending over backward to meet other people's expectations, and you start living according to your own. But let me warn you, when you start prioritizing yourself, not everyone will be happy about it. Some people may call you selfish in a negative way. They may accuse you of not caring or of being too focused on yourself. But as Marcus Aurelius said, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. In other words, what others think of your decision to prioritize your well-being is irrelevant, especially if they don't understand the value of self-respect. At the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is yours. So don't let the fear of judgment stop you from doing what's right for you. Being selfish strengthens your self-worth by teaching you to prioritize yourself, respect your time, and set boundaries that protect your energy. It's not about being inconsiderate, it's about acknowledging that you deserve to be a priority in your own life. When you do this, you build a sense of confidence and self-respect that no one can take away. So, I encourage you to start thinking about how you can be a little more selfish in your daily life. What are some ways you can start putting yourself first without feeling guilty? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, as the Stoics believed, true happiness comes from within. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Number 7. Being selfish helps you achieve your goals. Let's talk about why being selfish helps you achieve your goals. Now, I know the word selfish can make people uncomfortable, but we need to flip that idea on its head. Being selfish in the context of Stoic philosophy isn't about ignoring others or being self-absorbed. It's about focusing on your own path, your own goals, and ensuring you're not losing yourself in the expectations or demands of others. Think about it. How often do you find yourself putting off your own priorities because you're helping someone else, or saying yes to things that don't serve you? The reality is, the more you allow your time and energy to be consumed by others, the further you drift from what's important to you. As Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wisely said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." So why is it so important to be selfish with your time and focus? Because when you're not, you risk scattering your energy across countless distractions. Modern life is full of demands from every direction: work, family, friends, social obligations, and it's all too easy to get caught up in the needs of others while neglecting your own. You might tell yourself, "I'll focus on my goals tomorrow," but tomorrow turns into next week, and before you know it, years have passed, and you're no closer to where you want to be. Being selfish means saying no to the things that pull you away from your path. It means having the courage to prioritize what truly matters to you and not feeling guilty about it. Let me share a story that might hit home. A close friend of mine, let's call her Lisa, had always been the type to put everyone else's needs ahead of her own. She was the go-to person at work, the one who would take on extra projects, help co-workers with their tasks, and never say no. Outside of work, she was just as accommodating, always helping friends with favors, never missing a family event, and being the reliable person everyone could count on. But the problem was, Lisa had her own dreams. She wanted to start a small business, something she had been passionate about for years. Yet every time she planned to sit down and work on it, something would come up: a work emergency, a friend in need, a family commitment. Slowly, she realized that if she kept saying yes to everything else, she would never say yes to herself. It wasn't until Lisa hit a breaking point, completely exhausted and frustrated, that she decided to make a change. She began to say no, not in a rude or abrupt way, but with the understanding that her time was valuable, and she deserved to use it for things that aligned with her goals. And guess what? Within months of focusing on herself, she launched her business. She felt a sense of fulfillment that she hadn't experienced in years, all because she made the decision to be a little selfish with her time. Now think about your own life. How many times have you postponed your own dreams or goals because you were too busy fulfilling someone else's? What could you achieve if you took back some of that time for yourself? Being selfish with your time is not just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to the things that will move you forward. When you begin to protect your time, you create space for clarity and focus. You're no longer constantly reacting to external demands, but instead, you're proactively working toward your personal goals. Whether it's advancing in your career, improving your health, or developing a new skill, you need to carve out the time to work on these things, and that often requires being selfish. Ask yourself, what's more important, the fleeting satisfaction of pleasing others, or the long-term fulfillment of achieving your own dreams? Another reason why being selfish is critical to achieving your goals is that it teaches you discipline. When you set boundaries and focus on your priorities, you develop a stronger sense of self-discipline, which is essential for success. You start to realize that your goals won't achieve themselves. They require consistent effort and attention. And the more disciplined you become in guarding your time and energy, the more progress you make. It's like working out at the gym. You can't expect to see results if you're only sporadically showing up. Success in any area of life requires showing up for yourself regularly, and that starts with being selfish enough to protect the time you need to make progress. But here's something important to remember. Being selfish doesn't mean you're abandoning everyone else or neglecting your relationships. It's about balance. You can still support your loved ones and be there for your friends, but you do it on your own terms. You make sure that your own goals and needs are met first, so that when you do give your time to others, It's coming from a place of abundance, not sacrifice. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This Stoic principle reminds us to act in accordance with what is right for us. Being true to ourselves and our needs is a moral obligation, not something to feel guilty about. So, what does this all mean for you? It means that achieving your goals is within your control, but only if you make the conscious decision to prioritize them. It's time to stop feeling guilty for focusing on your own needs and start recognizing that your dreams deserve just as much attention as anyone else's. You are the architect of your own life, and you cannot build the life you want if you're constantly handing over the tools to others. Ask yourself, what is one goal you've been putting off because you've been too busy? And how can you start being a little more selfish with your time to make it happen? As we come to the end of this video, I want you to take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed. Being selfish in the right way is not about ignoring the needs of others, but about reclaiming your time, energy, and focus so you can show up as your best self. When you take control of your own happiness, you're not just benefiting yourself. You're allowing the people around you to experience the most authentic, fulfilled version of who you are. By setting boundaries, protecting your time, and prioritizing your own well-being, you create the space for real growth and balance in your life. Remember, as Epictetus said, "He who is not a master of himself cannot be free." That freedom begins when you decide to take charge of your own life and stop feeling responsible for everyone else's happiness. So what steps will you take this week to start putting yourself first? What boundaries will you set to make more room for the things that truly matter to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your plans in the comments below, whether it's saying no to something that drains you or carving out time for a passion you've neglected. Let's start a conversation about how we can all be a little more selfish in the best way possible. And if this video made you think differently about your life, or if it stirred something inside you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Stoic in Your Life for more thought-provoking discussions like this. Life is too short to live on someone else's terms, and your dreams, your mental health, and your goals matter more than you might think. Prioritize them, because when you take care of yourself, everything else falls into place. Thanks for watching, and remember, self-care isn't selfish, it's the foundation of a life well lived. See you next time.